Well, actually, the secret of my success, such as it was, is I never say no. And I was a singer. I started as an opera singer. And then one day my agent said, wouldn't you like to do a musical? And I said, yes. So I did some musicals in the West End. And then my agent says, wouldn't you like to do some straight acting on TV? And I said, yes. And the next thing I know, I'm on television. And I did some TV plays. And then after that, I started getting guest spots in, loads and loads of series, many of which people won't remember. Wendy Craig, Mother Makes Three, The Sweeney, The Professionals, Minder, and Doctor Who, and Emmerdale, and so on. So I was always turning up in these things. Well, yeah, you're getting me into a difficult area here because I am not a science fiction fan, and I have to tell you that I'd hardly ever watched Doctor Who. And my agent rang up and said, you've got to go and see this director for a part in Doctor Who. And I said, oh yes, Doctor Who. And she said, now you do watch it. And I said, sometimes, So I was not a fan. So I went along actually not being a fan and not knowing a lot about it. And I read the part and I thought, well, this is quite forceful, this is quite meaningful. Yeah, and it was a great time. And I'll tell you what's interesting was that I never saw, for 30 years, I never saw myself in it because I was booked to go to Mallorca and run a theatre there. And I had to leave for Mallorca immediately after filming. And I was there for a year and then various other things, and I worked all over the place. And what was interesting was that the director was called Paul Monia, and he was the grandson or the great-grandson of the great Impressionist painter Monia. That's all I remember. That's what impressed me, because I'm an Impressionist fan. I just love the Impressionists. I thought, God, I'm working with a director who's related to Monia. That's all I remember. And it was great. And I was a little trepidatious, actually, about working with the great John Pertwee, because he was a big, big star in Doctor Who. I think he did it for 3-4 years, So, he was very nice, but he was very professional. And he had this carefully cultivated sort of eccentric thing, this amazing voice, extraordinary. And there was an interesting story, because he's no longer with us, actually, that someone on the show told me. They went to his house. He had this amazing house in Hammersmith, and he took them into this double garage, and it was full of all the things that he'd been given for special appearances. He was given them in kind. So there was a speedboat and a quad bike and a motorbike and a television set. He said, oh, yes, I've given this in kind. Don't take fees. So he was eccentric, yes. Yes. But quite a lot of it was on location as well. And when I see it back now, because a fan recently sent me a copy of the BBC video, I mean, it's extraordinary. Because when I got the video, I'd just been watching, the latest sort of series with David Tennant, which is shot on film, I think, and it's amazingly slick and special effects, and it just looks like a movie, doesn't it? It's fantastic. And then you see this thing with kind of wavy scenery and these little Daleks that look like pepper pots. And I remember the guys inside them sat inside these little pepper pots, and they walked them along the way little kids do, with their little bicycles. The first bike you have, you walk it along. And they were going, exterminate, exterminate. Well, the main thing was that they couldn't go very fast, and they were supposed to be frightening. But if you're sitting in a little thing and you're having to, run with your feet, but you can't run very fast because the thing is it's like where I'm sitting here, you see. So I'm in this blinking Dalek going, exterminate, exterminate. And you can't go very fast, and we're all supposed to be frightened, and we're all supposed to run away. And they're the least frightening things I've ever seen. And I think when kids watch it now, because I watched it recently with my grandchildren, I mean, they loved it, but, frightened of the Daleks, come on, no, not anymore. It's not frightening. Talking of which, every time anybody finds I've ever been associated with Doctor Who, they always say, exterminate, exterminate. It's very boring, especially as I never was a Dalek. Well, they were also quite frightening, actually, because they picked very big guys. I mean, I'm 6'1", and I was like, hello? You know, seriously big guys, with those amazing kind of heads on. And in a way, I thought that was the best thing about it, actually, because they were really frightening. And I think one of the things, whether you're doing movies or television, anything, if you want thrills, you're only as good as your villains. You're only as good as your baddies, aren't you? So you've got to have frightening baddies. Oh, well, it's very interesting you say that, because it's only recently occurred to me the significance of it. I played a character called Monia. More of that in a minute. I played a character called Monia who comes back from the future to help save the present, because if they save the now present, they save the then future. And I only just realised, because that's Terminator, isn't it? The first Terminator was all about that, and the second Terminator. So this kind of predated the whole Terminator scenario, which was interesting. But talking of the video and talking of Monia, can you believe my consternation when I actually got the video from a fan, and my part was described as Monica. So the BBC gave me a change of sex, which was rather amusing. Oh, it was Osterley House, down near Chiswick. And what was wonderful at that time, they actually technically appeared to blow it up. I think we cut from the real Osterley House, which is a magnificent mansion, to a sort of model, and it went up. The model went up. Whereas now in special effects, you'd actually make it appear you'd blown up the real house. John Pertwee, he gets on a quad bike. One of those, brum, brum, and he loved that, and we couldn't get him off it. He was going all over the place on that, and I remember actually a lot of my stuff was in the studio, and it was really, really interesting because we had a very big set. I remember we had to have this enormous set with all these people on it, all at computers, and Aubrey Woods, God bless him. Hello, Valentine. Dear Aubrey Woods playing the villain, the mastermind. And I remember it was a very big set. That's one of the things I remember. And Katie Manning, was it? Was it Katie Manning who played? I remember that. So that's what I remember about it. It was a big set, and being on location, I just remember it was a weird location because we shot it all around Chiswick. We had Osterley House, and then we had the canal, and then we were supposed to have a tunnel, so we would run under this bridge where the railway went over the canal, under the bridge, and then miraculously, cut to the studio where we were coming down steps into our little amazing place. We were all hiding. And there was myself, and there was Anna Barry, and Scott Fredericks, and somebody else. There was 4 of us, I think, who had come back guerrillas. And we wore these really strange sort of army-type uniforms, which is really weird. And we had these guns, and when they went bang, there was a little kind of puff, and people fell down dead, and we made them invisible. So in the edit, they cut them out. So I'd point it at someone and go, puff, and there's a little puff, and that person would disappear. I mean, when you look back on it now, it's very naive, isn't it?